Now with our installation complete, it's important to point out that there are other methods for the installation of the MySQL Server database system. Because this course is not focused on Linux administrative tasks, the process that was demonstrated was the simplest and most straightforward process for the installation. So now that we have our server installed and running, we need to immediately address some issues with the default installation. Unlike previous versions of the MySQL database system, version 5.6 does not create an empty password root user. In fact, it creates a root user with a randomly assigned password to increase the security of the initial installation. So we're going to have to go in and address those user security issues with our installation. Then we're going to have to test the installation to ensure that it is running properly. And then there are some default settings, such as the time zone tables, that need to be populated. If this is a production system, we'd want to make sure that the MySQL daemon, the service itself, is set for automatic start and stop with the operating system. So let's go look at some of that code to accomplish these tasks. After installing the server, the next step is to install the client tools. We're going to simply repeat the steps that we completed for the server installation, and this time we're going to do it for the client. We have an RPM package for the client tools, and we're going to convert that client RPM into a Debian package using the alien tool. Don't forget to include the scripts directive. Okay, so our package was converted, and we now have a Debian package for our client tools. And we're going to do the installation now, the same as we did with the server. And this is going to provide us the tools we need to be able to communicate, to administer the server. Okay, so now we have our client tools installed. Our server is running. We have verified that. However, if we try to connect to the server as root with a password, and we're going to connect to the MySQL database, it wants a password because in 5.6 they've locked the default installation down by assigning a random password to the root directory. In previous versions, the root directory had no password at all, which is obviously very dangerous to the security of the server. So where is this default password? So according to the documentation, MySQL, during the installation process, created a random password and put it into a file that it wrote to the root directory. So let's go look at the root directory. Notice that I am super user in this window. And there it is. .mysql_secret contains the random password assigned to the root account. So let's take a look at that file. And there it is. This is our randomly assigned root password. And we need to use that to log into the system. And there is nothing else we can do when connecting to the MySQL server for the first time other than change this password. Now, there's another approach to doing this. Let's try this, and if it doesn't work for you, then I'll show you the other. There, so we're in. So now if this doesn't work for you, for some reason doesn't work for you, before we forget, let's reset the password for our root user, because it is a requirement that on the first connection to the server after installation using the root user, we must change this password. There are a couple of approaches for changing the root user password. One is to go into the MySQL command prompt and use the command set password. So another approach is to use the MySQL admin tool, identify the user and the command that we want to execute, password. So this tells the MySQL admin tool that we want to change the password for this user. And now we must enter our current password and the new password and confirm the new password, and we're done. So now we have change the default random password assigned to the root account during the installation process. Again, this is the second of the possible methods for changing the root password, and in fact any password. So here's another. From within the client command line tool, we're going to update the MySQL user table. We're going to set the password equal to password encrypted term, and you can see that 4 rows were affected. So we updated 4 rows in the user table that correspond to the user root and change the password for that user. If we use this process for updating the password, we now need to flush the privileges and restart the MySQL server. So this is a little more work than just using the admin tool, but it works. So 3 different ways of changing the password for the root account. This should be the very first thing you do after the installation is complete. So now let's test the installation and see the status of our server. Using the command show status, we can see all of the variable settings for our MySQL server. And we'll discuss most of these throughout the course, but this confirms for us that the server is running, it is configured, and we are connected to it. So one of the other commands is show databases. Don't forget your semicolon. And these are the databases that are currently installed on the server. So we have 4 databases installed. Let's switch to the test database. And we're going to ask to show the tables in test. There is nothing in the test database. So let's look at the MySQL database and show tables in MySQL. Don't forget your semicolon. And there we have a list of all of the tables in the MySQL database. So let's look inside one of these tables. Don't forget your semicolon. And this is the empty table for time zone. Okay, so let's fix the time zone issue. To do that, we're going to pick up the time zone information from the Ubuntu system. There is a zone info database in the user share folder, and we're going to pipe that to our MySQL as the root user. So asks for our password, then this tool loads the zone information into the time zone table. Now we'll notice that there was nothing in the time zone table in our last select from that table. Now we select from it, and there are 474 rows. So this is one of those initial configuration issues that has to be done manually to get our server ready for the production environment. If you followed along with the demonstration of the installation of MySQL, then you should have a working version of MySQL version 5.6 database server as well as the client tools. Now this isn't the only process for installation of the system, but it is the simplest and was chosen because it doesn't rely on any expertise with Linux administration. So a few simple scripts and the installation process was automated for us. And following the installation, we secured the server, although in 5.6, the root password is automatically randomized for us. In previous versions, the root password was blank and required that post-installation, a password be assigned to the root user of the system. Also, following the installation, we configured the time zone table. As we move forward, we're going to see other configuration settings that we can manipulate to increase the performance of the installation.